But there's another issue that's really been burning on my heart for a long time, and it does dovetail with that, but it's a precursor, if you will. It's a predecessor to understanding what is going on in children's ministry. That if we just jump ahead and just go right into this, we're just going to teach kids to hear God's voice, and boom, here's 10 steps to do it, and all of that, we're going to be missing some very powerful fundamental issues that's going on right now.
All right. Hi, friends. Yesterday, we said we were going to play some clips from the Root KidMin Collective that just wrapped up last week. It was an amazing, anointed 6 days. If you missed it, oh my word. There were so many nuggets. It's called the KidMin Collective, but this one was all about the Holy Spirit. And I'm telling you, if you are in ministry, if you're a parent, if you are a Christian, the truth is, these truths, I don't know how else I can say it. There aren't words to describe what God released into so many lives that week. And so this week I said I was going to play some nuggets. So starting with a real, what's the word for it? Pioneer in children's ministry. She has her finger on the pulse of what's going on worldwide with kids. So if you're not in children's ministry, don't tune this out. There's a lot of information that you're going to need to hear. And it may even be uncomfortable to hear, but you need to hear it. And it's going to help you be a better parent, a better minister. Even if you're a senior pastor, I'm telling you, you need to hear these things. So pioneers in children's ministry, I would say there's not that many. We have Jim Weidman, Mark Harper, obviously Pastor George, Pastor Willie George. There's some, of course, John Tash, Pastor John Tash. I'd say those four guys, plus who we're going to have today, really revolutionized thinking when it came to children's ministry. And the truth is, there aren't very many voices looking to revolutionize how we raise up kids as Christians anymore. Too many people have fallen to status quo, and there's so many other things that are important. We can't push them hard into things of God, otherwise we might cause rebellion, which is a lie from hell, and I'm not getting into that. I'm pulling myself back so that you can hear from Becky Fischer. Yes, that's right. Pastor Becky Fischer was part of the Root KidMin Collective, and so it was so good. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have to cut this into two parts, because the first half and the I tried to cut it out. This is the truth. I tried to cut it down to just one epic podcast, and I couldn't do it. There's so much truth and so many nuggets in this. You just have to hear it. I can't delay any longer. Let me just flick it over to Pastor Becky Fischer.
The topic that I'm going to talk about, which will ultimately lead into the things of the Spirit. But what I want to talk about right now is, do we need a plan? Do we need a new plan for children's ministry today? And this is actually comes from a study that came out. And I don't know how much you guys follow studies, but if you're serious about kids ministry, you really should. This one was put out just within the last year or so, and it was a report that was conducted by 4 or 5 different countries: the United States, United Kingdom, Brazil, and Canada. Got together. Some international ministry teams got together and produced this, and they came away with some really rather disturbing things. The big takeaway for me was that only 2% of kids ministry leaders actually have a strategy for what they're doing in their ministries. And I don't know if that shocks you. Maybe you're one of them, or maybe you're part of the 2%. But it is something I go away with, and I shake my head because I'm concerned about children's ministry to begin with. What I see, as I'm a part of children's ministry groups on Facebook and all the rest of it, it's just like I just really wonder what's going on in our children's ministries. But we're going to take a look at that before this is over. So again, what I want to talk about this morning is, do we need a new plan for children's ministry? And this is the question that's coming out of this particular report. Now, the takeaway on this particular report has to do with the fact that this was a study of what has happened in our churches during the COVID shutdowns, and now that it's over again. And when you go into and you just narrow everything down, what the issue was that they saw was that during the pandemic, just basically our kids were left in the dust. That there was very little, if any, ministry going on in kids ministry. For instance, I can tell you that my leaders around the world were struggling in this area. That in Latvia, for instance, they were shut down. No children under 18 were allowed to go to church, whether they were vaccinated or not, for 2 solid years. So there's been no ministry going forward for that nation. The Philippines was basically the same thing. It was very interesting to listen to what my leaders were saying around the world of what was going on. And the report goes into a great deal of detail, which we're not going to outline here, of how the parents felt about how their children were treated, ignored, if you will, what kind of resources and all that they were given during this period of time. And the bottom line is that during that 2-year period here in the United States and in other places, that they were we lost the kids, basically, except in very few places. And it does say statistics, and the statistics vary a little whether you're in the United States or whether you're in Brazil or whatever, but they basically are dim results. And so we know that the pandemic had serious consequences, and this shouldn't surprise us, because we know that the schools, our public school kids, are behind 1 to 2, 3 years in reading and all of the other issues of learning in school. And so we have a crisis in America actually around the world, just in general, in our school kids. So it shouldn't surprise us that we've got some real issues in the church along this same line. And for those of you who are coming in late, what I'm talking about is I'm discussing a report that was put out by some leaders in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Brazil concerning the state of children's ministry as a result of what has happened in the pandemic. Now, we're going to move on from that. I want to talk about another report, but you need to know about this one, because right now, those kids that left the church, the report says they're not interested in coming back to the church. And while there are some churches never shut down, other churches have restarted, and it looks like some of them are doing well. But the truth is, most of the churches are not doing well in attracting those families and children's ministry back again. And in this 2-year period of time, the parents will tell you many of their kids have just completely lost interest in church altogether. So we've got a real problem in that area. That's just one of the issues that's going on in the churches today. And for those of you who came in late, you probably didn't hear me say that the big takeaway of this report was that only 2% of kids ministry leaders around the world have a clear strategy for what they're supposed to be doing in kids ministry. And so that is very alarming. And I don't know where you stand. I don't know if you feel you have a clear strategy. I don't know if you feel that you have any strategy, if you feel like you're part of that 2% or whatever. But we're going to go on with some other reports and just take a look at what is going down. So we know that so far what we've learned in this report is we've got some serious problems with what's going on in our churches. Kids have left the church. Children now, we're not talking teenagers anymore. We're talking the kids have left the church because they couldn't go. They've lost interest. And so what are we going to do to attract them back? And if we can attract them back, what are we going to do to keep them when only 2% of the kids ministers have a strategy for children's ministry? And I'm going to talk about a strategy that I believe the Holy Spirit has given us over the last 20 years that has proven very effectively, and which I believe with all my heart that should be the strategy for every children's ministry in the world. Okay, so we'll move on to that in just a few minutes. But then there is another report that I want to refer to that I believe is even more concerning. You ought to see my desk here. If you guys only knew what was going on behind the scenes here, I have my microphone propped up on a Kleenex box, and it's not very professional looking back here, but that's reality. Okay, so I want to talk about this report as well, which is a heavy read. This is not the casual thing you're going to sit down on a Saturday night and just go, oh, wow, what a fascinating book. But it is fascinating, but very tough slugging through the whole thing. This is a report that was a combined effort. How many of you have seen this report? Did any of you buy this? Did any of you buy this report? I didn't figure. Okay, so it was put out as a combined effort between Awanas and the Barna Group. And they did some research, and they are calling this report Children's Ministry in a New Reality. I know that's backwards on your screen, but that's what it says, Children's Ministry in a New Reality. It's, like I said, it's a very heavy read. The takeaway in this particular research is that the children's ministries that we have today, I can just say it in a nutshell, they're outdated. What we're doing as a form of children's ministry, or I guess we could go ahead and insert the word strategy here. What everybody's doing in children's ministry is outdated. And I will go on to explain why that is. But Barna stated in this book that the church is woefully unprepared for Generation Z. And may I remind you that Generation Z is already grown up. I think the youngest of them are in high school now. And they continued that while church leaders really want to help the children of Generation Alpha, that's everybody under 13, okay, that they want to help them become followers of Christ. The reality is that we're living in a dominant culture now where they are the powerful force that's competing to form our children into anything but Christ followers. Now, in this report, Barna says that the culture is converting them into what they call hyper individualists. Let me define that for you. And I think you will see where they're going in this report. But a hyper individualist, another way to describe this is a culture that is turned totally to the individual. And we could go and name all these different things, but you might really define it as hyper selfishness. Okay, so everything is about us. It's about our needs. It's about our dreams. It's about our whims, our feelings, our emotions. Everything, our dreams, everything is about us. That's where the children are today and the youth are today. And I think if you just look at it very simply, you can see that everywhere in what's actually happening. And of course, that's the exact opposite of the Christian ethos, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so they go on to explain, so this is what makes us outdated, the technology, and so the new reality of children's ministry is we got to up our game in the area of technology. Now, I have some thoughts about that. Certainly, that is a part of a strategy going forward. But what does that mean? And what children's minister is truly equipped to deal and compete on that kind of level with what's going on in the world. Okay, so just moving on, talking about this is the new reality is that the secular society, our kids are encountering big intellectual questions. And we can say that's everything from gender to evolution to science to does God exist? You know, all these big questions are being thrown at our children at younger and younger ages. And none of those big questions are pro-Christ. They're all leading our kids away from Christ. I mean, and you can go right down to Sesame Street and talk about how all of this stuff is being interjected. Disney, we can all talk about Disney for a while if we wanted to. It's all being interjected, and our kids are being left helpless to know how to defend what they believe. What they're learning in Sunday school, if they go to Sunday school, is being thwarted by what they're getting on a TV and in movies and on YouTube and all the rest of it. And so the takeaway in this report is that transferring a lasting, resilient faith to the next generation is going to require unprecedented imagination and collaboration in approaches to children's ministry. Now, I'm not prepared to be one of those giant collaborators and to come away with just what's going to be the next greatest thing in technology and what's going to put all of us on an even playing field, because that's an overwhelming topic. But I believe I know some things that can trump even the technology if we would grasp these concepts and go ahead and implement them. Now, as proof of their pudding, they say among adults ages 18 to 29, the dropout rate from church sits at an alarming 64%. Well, if that's true, Barna came out 20 years ago and said the dropout rate was 70%. So is there an improvement? Or I don't think so, because he was talking about teens at that time. We're talking about 18 to 29-year-olds. So that's going up a little bit. But the point is nearly 2/3 across millennials and Gen Z who had a Christian background that have since left the church. And they revealed that only 10% in that age group are what they call resilient disciples, meaning that they're committed, faithful, and engaged Christians who continue to show up to church. Okay, so now I could go on, and I'm hoping I'm not overwhelming you or bombarding you with too much information, but you need to know this background of what's going on in the real world, folks, of what's happening with our kids that affects everything when it comes to training them to walk in the supernatural and to engage in their faith. So again, I'm going to continue to lay a foundation here, because for those of you that are coming in late, we started our talk by opening up with a report that come out from some leaders in the UK, the United States, Brazil, and Canada. And I think there's one or two other countries, I'm not sure, but they're saying that from their findings that less than 2% of kids ministers around the world have a strategy for what they're supposed to be doing in children's ministry. And so we look at this, and then we go to this other report, and now they're telling us that we're losing our kids, which we already know. I mean, if you have to be like not paying attention to realize that we're losing our kids from the church. You didn't need a report to tell you that. And so anyway, we want to continue on, and there's actually other reports that have come out. I just don't have time to get into them all. But both of these reports are detailed. There's too much for us to digest. I don't want to focus strictly on them. I want to focus on their headlines that's sending us alarm bells saying we got to do something different than we're doing in kids ministry, because what we're doing is not working. Okay. And before you can get kids filled with the Holy Spirit, you got to get them to church. All right. You got to teach them on these things. So let's go on. And I don't want to come off here sounding like a know-it-all, but I have been at this long enough to have a little bit of perspective of what's going on in the church and what's going on in our children's ministries, because I've taught in 29 nations around the world. I'm a part of groups like on Facebook and different things, and I get reports back all the time of what people are encountering. And so I'm going to share what I believe is a strategy that the Holy Spirit gave us And as I said earlier, I believe it's a strategy. They said, we don't have a strategy. I'm going to give you a strategy that that it's going to even trump technology. Okay. And I'm telling you, they're expecting all of us to suddenly become tech giants here and be able to compete with Disney and all the rest of it. Y'all got another thing coming, because there's a whole lot of grandmas out there running Sunday schools and children's ministries that just are barely on Facebook. And now you want them to be tech giants? I don't think so. And so, and I do not think the answer is let somebody else produce your material and then you just plug it into a DVD player or turn on an MP3 over the big screen, and now we're going to solve the technology problem. That's not what it's at. So I'm sure they have some other ideas. I'm sure there's a think tank out there that's coming up with strategies, but I want to give you something that's homegrown, something that every one of you that you can do. And I believe it trumps technology, and it will give you a strategy going forward in children's ministry. Okay, so the first report, just to refresh for those who are coming in late, the first report says that we've got a serious post-pandemic issue where during the 2 years of shutdown, a significant number of our kids left the church and have no interest in coming back again after not being involved in church for 2 years. And so we've got to have a strategy to get them back again. Once we get them back, we need to know what to do once they get there. Okay, so I'm going to read for you some emails that I was given. And for those of you who don't know, part of what I did many years ago is I created an online training school, because I saw very early on that if I traveled 365 days out of the year, I could never reach as many children's ministers and parents as was necessary to actually affect a change in our culture. And so the Holy Spirit led me to do a school. It's a 45-hour school. It's called the School of Supernatural Children's Ministry. It comes in 3 parts. The first part has to do with children's ministry basics. This last part has to do with parenting issues. The second part has to do with training kids to operate in the supernatural. But what I want to do is I have graduates coming in all the time from all over the world, and I'm going to read some emails to you because I think they highlight what people are feeling and experiencing as they enter into children's ministry. This first graduate said, I've been in children's ministry for over 18 years. Over time, however, I began to notice that something was missing. The children didn't seem to be experiencing Jesus in a way like I did, and in a way that captivated them and gave them a desire to live for him. I went to many kids ministry trainings and over the years, and I was told to appease their short attention spans. I was told that I needed to become a great entertainer, and that I was told I needed to have a Disneyland mentality when it came to my classroom, and above all else, to make sure my class was fun. Okay, so I strive to do just that. I strive to be the entertainer and making my lessons as fun and short and appealing as I could. By the way, I can teach kids for a half hour to an hour and hold their attention the whole time because of what I teach and how I teach. I'm just going to throw that in. Okay, this attention span stuff is junk. All right, now you got to be interesting, you got to be good, and you got to be anointed, but it's junk. Okay, so I kept it. And for a while that was good, she says, but kids were still leaving the church as they got older. There just had to be more. There had to be more to make Jesus real to them. And while I was struggling with this, I came across Becky's lessons in the School of Supernatural Children's Ministry, and each lesson showed me what I've been missing and how to truly captivate children's hearts for God. And that strategy, I'm going to share just the nutshell version of it, but before we're done with this session today.
This is a horrible spot to cut it, but we have to. We're running out of time. So if you want to know that strategy, you're going to have to join us tomorrow. I know, wah, wah, wah. I can hear the groans of everybody already. I'm telling you, this strategy is beautiful. It's simple, it's beautiful, it's real, and if we put the time into it, it can change our families, our children's ministry, our churches, our small groups, our everything that we do that kids are involved in. We need to implement this strategy. If we're Christians, our life should revolve around Christ. Why would we raise up our kids to have anything different, to do anything different? And so tune in tomorrow. I'll play the big clip of it again tomorrow, including that strategy. So I know that's such a cliffhanger. Message below. I want to hear parts that you really enjoyed, what stood out to you, and then I'll see you all tomorrow. I'm not going to belabor it. It was just so good. Oh my word. Oh my word.